closer, breathe in the light. Morning hum in the garden high. Every wing has a story to tell. Every root knows how to heal. We listen, we learn, we gather and grow. Where the bees and the wild things know.
Hello, bee enthusiasts. Welcome to the Attic Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Schramm. I was inspired to create this episode because my oldest son just eloped today, and I'm recording this on Friday, May 1st. He's currently serving in the Army, so I only see him about once a year, and I've only met the woman he married a few times, but she's absolutely lovely and seems to be just perfect for him. And I think they're perfect for each other. They complement each other really well. And I'm just so happy for them. Today's not only the first day of May, but it's also Beltane, the reason we sometimes celebrate what we call May Day. In Gaelic traditions, it's celebrated as the peak of spring, occurring halfway between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. It represents a time to honor fertility, sensuality, and creative energy, and to set intentions for the upcoming summer season. So, Eli and Molly, this episode is for you. There's a moment in spring, you probably know the one, when you step outside and something has shifted. The light is different, the air smells different, and without quite knowing why, you feel more awake, like something in you has been waiting for exactly this. I want to talk about that feeling today, where it actually comes from, what it does to us biologically, chemically, and historically. And I want to talk about the honeybee, of course, because the hive has its own version of this story. And it is one of the most dramatic, beautiful, and frankly, wild love stories in all of nature. If you keep bees, or if you've spent any time learning about them, you already know that winter inside the hive is a kind of suspended animation. The colony clusters together, vibrating their flight muscles to generate heat, slowly burning through the honey stores they spent all summer building. And they're surviving. They're not living. They're really just surviving. And then something changes. The days grow longer. Light creeps back into each day, minute by minute, and inside the hive, that shift in photoperiod, the duration of daylight, begins to send signals. A 2021 field study using data from 95 colonies across 8 European countries found that both longer days and rising temperatures together trigger the resumption of brood rearing in early spring. The researchers found that temperatures had a stronger effect under shorter days, but as days lengthened, photoperiod became the dominant signal. The light itself becomes the cue. So think about that. The colony is reading the sky. It's measuring the light. When brood rearing resumes, the hive's internal temperature has to climb all the way up to 95 degrees, the temperature required to raise young bees. And that's not a passive process. Worker bees generate that heat themselves, burning honey calories to do it. The whole colony is investing in the future before the future has even arrived. And this is the hive's spring objective. It operates at two different levels. At the individual level, the queen begins laying eggs again, sometimes thousands per day. At the colony level, the entire organism is building towards something much larger, which is reproduction through swarming. A colony divides, a new colony is born, and this spring timing is intentional. New swarms need the full season ahead of them to build their honey stores before the next winter. the hive anticipates spring just as it's reacting to spring. So let's talk about the queen. If the colony is the organism, the queen is the heart of its reproduction. And the story of how she mates is, and I have to say this, one of the most extraordinary reproductive events in the animal kingdom. A virgin queen emerges from her cell. She is at this point unmated and not laying any eggs. Within just about a week of emergence, on a warm, sunny afternoon, she takes to the air for what beekeepers call the nuptial flight. And she doesn't mate with just one drone. She mates with a lot of them. In the air, she meets drones, the male bees, at what are called drone congregation areas. Specific locations, sometimes hundreds of meters across, where male bees gather in dense, hovering clouds, just waiting. So think of your local bar or wherever guys hang out, hoping to pick up women. The queen flies through them, and she mates mid-air with anywhere from 12 to 18 different drones in a single reproductive window. By the way, each drone dies in the act of mating. His genitalia are pulled free, and he falls, dead to the ground. The queen, though, carries the sperm of all of them, up to 100 million spermatozoa, stored in a specialized organ called the spermatheca. And here's the part that's pretty amazing. She'll use all of that stored sperm for the rest of her life. A queen can live 4 or 5 years and lay eggs the entire time. She mates once in that brief spring window, and that single event is the genetic foundation for millions of bees. Imagine the gravity of that single afternoon. The genetic diversity created during those nuptial flights is not incidental. It's actually one of the primary mechanisms by which a colony maintains its health and resilience. Polyandry, which is mating with multiple partners, generates a colony made up of multiple subfamilies. So different genetic lines within the same hive will respond differently to disease, temperature variations, and forage cycles. The queen's promiscuity is, in a very real sense, her colony's immune system. Love, in this case, is not exclusive, but it is strategic. It's generous in scope, and it carries consequences that echo for years. Now let's talk about us. Because here's the thing that most people don't realize or even maybe consider. Humans have a reproductive season too. It's subtle. It's been muddied by electric light, central heating, global food supply, and birth control. But it's there, it's buried in the data, and it's been studied for nearly 2 centuries. The first documented research on human birth seasonality goes back to the early 1800s. Since then, epidemiological studies across multiple countries have consistently shown a seasonal pattern in conception and birth rates. The pattern varies by geography, and the mechanisms are still debated, but the pattern itself is real. In northern high-latitude countries, think Scandinavia, Northern Europe, and even the northern United States, research has shown a peak in conception rates during late spring and early summer, leading to a corresponding peak in births in late winter and early spring. And there are several interacting factors for this. The first one is light. As days lengthen in spring, research shows that the duration of daylight, that photoperiod we talked about with the bees, directly influences the dopamine and serotonin systems in the human brain. A 2020 study published in Scientific Reports found that longer, summer-like photoperiods were associated with elevated serotonin content in the midbrain and reduced anxiety and depressive-like behavior. More light means more serotonin. More serotonin means better mood, less anxiety, and more openness. Spring doesn't just feel hopeful, it's neurochemically producing hope. And dopamine, the reward and motivation neurotransmitter, is also modulated by photoperiod. Dopamine dynamics in the brain's primary reward center are directly impacted by photoperiod. The same reward system that lights up when you fall in love, when you pursue a goal, or when you anticipate something wonderful. That system is primed by spring light. So when you suddenly feel more alive in April, more social, more interested in being around people, more willing to take the emotional risk of connection, that's your dopamine system responding to the sun. The second factor in this is vitamin D. A 2022 study examining over 2 centuries of birth data from rural Poland found that spring conceptions, made possible by increased sun exposure, helped ensure adequate maternal vitamin D levels during critical developmental windows. Vitamin D deficiency in pregnancy is associated with a higher risk of adverse outcomes, including preeclampsia, preterm delivery, and low birth weight. The body, it seems, is trying to time things well. It wants to conceive when light is available, when resources are beginning to bloom, and when the chances of a healthy pregnancy are improving. The hive and the human are, in this way, reading the same sky. Now let's go one layer deeper. We've talked about serotonin, dopamine, and light, but there's another molecule that deserves its own moment, and that's oxytocin. Oxytocin has been called the love hormone, and while that label is kind of an oversimplification, it earns the name through its role in social bonding, in sexual behavior, in maternal care, pair bonding, and all kinds of attachment. Another 2022 review published in Frontiers in Neuroscience notes that oxytocin has a much wider range of physiological roles than previously understood, and that its interactions with sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, may explain why its effects vary so much by context, sex, and season. In other words, falling in love activates the same brain circuitry as seeking a reward. And spring, with its expanding light, its warming temperatures, its sensory overload of color and fragrance and bird song, it's calibrating that circuitry upward. The honeybee has a version of this too, though it operates at the colony level rather than the individual. When a colony begins its spring buildup, when brood is warm and thriving, and the first pollen is coming through the hive entrance in little yellow and orange packets, there's something that you might read as urgency and purpose spreading through the superorganism of a colony. It isn't oxytocin exactly, but the parallel is striking. The whole hive orients toward reproduction, toward connection, toward the future. I'd like to close with the swarm, because I think the swarm is the most underappreciated metaphor in all of beekeeping and maybe all of nature. When a colony swarms, it is reproducing, and this is a positive thing. The old queen leaves with roughly half the workers. She abandons the hive she has known, the honey stores, the built comb, the warmth of the established community, and launches herself into the unknown. She lands somewhere nearby, surrounded by a dense murmuring cloud of tens of thousands of bees, and she waits while scouts search for a new home. It's probably a little terrifying. It's definitely costly. The parent colony loses half its population at the very start of the foraging season. The swarm has no comb, no honey stores, no shelter. Everything is at risk. And yet, swarming is the most natural, fundamental expression of honeybee health. A colony that swarms is a colony so strong, so well-resourced, so full of life, that it literally overflows itself. It divides from abundance, not from weakness. And there's something worth sitting with in that. Spring asks us to overflow, to take the risk of the nuptial flight, to go out into that drone congregation area of the world, of relationships, of new projects and new possibilities, without any guarantee of return. The queen loses 10 to 20% of her sisters during mating flights. Some queens don't come back. The data is unsentimental about this. But the ones who do return, they carry something irreplaceable. A genetic inheritance drawn from many sources. a richness that no single drone could have provided. It's a resilience built from diversity. Spring is biological. It is photoperiod, dopamine, and vitamin D. It's swarming and nuptial flights and the long investment of warming brood. It's a signal written in light, read by every living thing that has survived a winter. And here's what I love about that, what I find genuinely moving in it. The biology doesn't diminish the feeling. Knowing that serotonin rises with the lengthening days doesn't make April or May feel less golden. Knowing that the queen's flight is strategic doesn't make it less miraculous. If anything, understanding the machinery makes the whole thing more remarkable. We are ancient creatures reading an ancient signal. Something in us, some chemical, some circuit, some memory written in DNA, knows what spring means. So, if you find yourself feeling a little more open lately, a little more interested in people, a little more willing to take a risk, to reach out, to begin something, listen to that. The hive is building, the queen is preparing her flight, the drones are gathering in the congregation areas, and the light is back. Thank you for spending time with me on the Attic Bee podcast today. If this episode moved you, share it with someone you love. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of those bees.
As the day settles back into green, let the quiet stay with you. Tend the small things, rest and remember. The hive is humming too. Until we meet where the wild things grow, may you